The courtroom was full of people. Some whispered quietly. Others stared at the boy standing in the middle. His name was Amir. He was only 16 years old. But today, he looked small and scared. Amir wore old clothes. His shoes were worn out, and his hands were shaking. He did not say a word. His eyes looked down at the floor. No one really knew what he was thinking. The judge, a tall man with glasses, looked at Amir carefully. The prosecutor stood up and began to speak loudly. This boy, Amir Khan, is accused of stealing from a local store. The evidence is clear. He was seen near the store that night. We believe he is guilty. The crowd murmured. Some nodded, some shook their heads, but nobody spoke for Amir. Amir's lawyer was a young woman named Sarah. She looked worried but calm. She glanced at Amir and gave him a small nod, trying to give him courage. The judge asked Amir, "Do you want to say anything in your defense?" Amir shook his head slowly. He kept silent. Everyone thought Amir was guilty because he did not speak. They did not know his story. Amir was not always quiet. At home, he was full of life. He loved to play with his little sister, Amina. She was only 8 years old and smiled all the time. Amir promised to protect her no matter what. Their parents had died 2 years ago. Since then, Amir had worked small jobs to take care of Amina. They lived in a small apartment, sometimes without enough food. Amir had no time to go to school. He missed his friends, but did not tell anyone. He did not want to feel weak. That night at the store, Amir was not stealing. He was only trying to buy medicine for Amina. She was sick with a high fever. Amir did not have enough money. He stood outside the store, hoping someone would help. But then the store alarm went off. Someone had already taken something from inside. The police arrived and saw Amir near the store. They arrested him without asking questions. In court, no one wanted to hear Amir's side. The prosecutor said, "The evidence is enough. He is a criminal." But Sarah, Amir's lawyer, believed in him. She said, "Amir is a good boy. He made a mistake, but he did not steal. Please listen carefully." The judge looked serious. He wanted to know the truth. Amir's silence made things harder. Some people thought he was hiding something. Others thought he was scared or guilty. But Amir was just afraid to speak, afraid to tell his story. He did not trust the court. He thought no one would believe him. Amina waited at home, missing her brother. She prayed every night for Amir's safety. Her small hands held a drawing she made for Amir, a picture of them together, smiling. She hoped the judge would listen. Back in the courtroom, Amir looked at the floor again. The judge said softly, "Amir, sometimes silence can say many things, but it can also hide the truth. If you want justice, you must tell your story." Amir looked up for a moment, but the words did not come. His secret stayed locked inside. The courtroom waited. The story had just begun. Would Amir ever speak? Would the truth come out? Or would he be judged forever by silence? The courtroom was filled with tension. Everyone's eyes were on Amir as the prosecutor stood up to tell his story. His voice was loud and clear. On the night of the robbery, Amir Khan was seen near the store where the theft happened. The prosecutor said, "Several witnesses spotted him. We have video footage that shows a figure matching Amir's description running from the scene. The evidence is strong. Amir is guilty." Amir stayed quiet. He did not look at the prosecutor. His hands were clenched tightly on his lap. The witnesses took the stand one by one. The first was Mr. Jenkins, the store owner. He was a tall man with a serious face. "I was working late that night," Mr. Jenkins said. "I saw a young boy near the back door. When I turned around, someone was running away. The door was open, and things were missing." The prosecutor asked, "Was the boy you saw Amir Khan?" Mr. Jenkins nodded slowly. "Yes, it looked like him." Next, a neighbor, Mrs. Lewis, spoke. "I heard a loud noise around 10 p.m., she said. "When I looked outside, I saw Amir running down the street. He looked scared, like he was running from someone." The prosecutor smiled. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Lewis, that Amir was the only person running from the store that night?" Mrs. Lewis nodded. "Yes, that is true." The prosecutor then showed a video clip. The screen lit up the courtroom. A shadowy figure ran quickly past the store's camera. "Look closely," said the prosecutor. "This is Amir, caught on camera running away after the crime." Everyone leaned forward. Amir's heart raced. He knew the figure was him, but he was not running away after stealing. The prosecutor continued, "The stolen items were found in a nearby alley. We have fingerprints and evidence linking Amir to these items." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Amir's lawyer, Sarah, stood up. She looked calm but firm. "Your Honor, we ask you to look closely at the full story. Amir has been silent, but he is not a criminal. There is more to this case than the prosecution shows." The judge nodded. "We will hear all sides." But the community outside the courtroom was not so kind. People whispered behind Amir's back. "Why would a good boy do such a thing? Looks like he is guilty to me." Amir felt the weight of their judgment. His silence made them believe the worst. That night, Amir sat alone in his cell. He thought about the night of the robbery. He was not a thief. He was only trying to help his sister. He wished someone would believe him. But who would? Back in the courtroom, the judge called for a break. He looked at Amir carefully. Amir finally spoke softly. "I didn't do it." The room went quiet. The judge asked, "Then why didn't you say anything before?" Amir looked down. "I was scared." The judge nodded slowly. "I will make sure your story is heard." The courtroom had taken a short break, but Amir's thoughts didn't rest. He sat in silence, hands in his lap, eyes lost in memories. While people in the courtroom whispered about what he might have done, no one knew who Amir truly was or what he had been through. This wasn't just a case about a stolen item. This was the story of a broken boy hiding a broken life. Flashback. Amir was only 14 when his world changed. It was a rainy night when his mother died. She had been sick for months, but Amir didn't understand how serious it was. One morning, she didn't wake up. His father had already passed away 2 years earlier in an accident. Now, Amir and his little sister, Amina, were alone in the world. He remembered the sound of the rain that day. He remembered Amina clinging to him, asking, "Amir, is Mama sleeping?" He didn't know what to say. He just hugged her, as tightly as he could, and whispered, "I'm here, I'll take care of you." From that moment, Amir stopped being a child. He dropped out of school and started looking for small jobs, washing cars, delivering groceries, cleaning shops, anything he could do to earn a little money for food, rent, and medicine. They lived in a tiny one-room apartment with one thin mattress, a broken fan, and a photo of their parents on the wall. Every day was a struggle, but Amir kept going for Amina. He never told anyone how hard life was. He never begged. He just worked quietly, always thinking about how to keep his sister safe. Sometimes he ate less, so Amina could have more. Sometimes he walked long distances, just to save the bus fare. He even sold his own shoes once, to buy cough syrup for her. The night of the crime was the hardest night of all. Amina had a high fever. She was burning up, crying in her sleep. Amir had no money left. The landlord was knocking on their door, demanding rent. There was no one to help. Amir rushed out, desperate. He went to the pharmacy, begged for medicine on credit. They refused. He stood near the store, hoping someone would listen to him. He didn't want to steal. He never had. But he needed help. That's when the alarm rang out, and everything went wrong. He was at the wrong place, at the worst time. And now, everyone thought he was a thief. Back to the courtroom. Amir sat quietly, remembering all this. He still hadn't told anyone. Even his lawyer, Sarah, didn't know the full story yet. But the weight in his heart was growing heavier. He looked at the judge, who was now reading the case file again. The judge's eyes had changed, less cold now, more curious. Maybe, just maybe, someone was ready to listen. In the hallway, Sarah stood near the wall, watching Amir from a distance. She could sense there was more to the story. She walked up to him and said gently, "Amir, I know you're scared, but you don't have to carry this alone. If you tell me the truth, I promise, I'll fight for you." Amir looked at her. His lips trembled. He wanted to speak, but his eyes turned away again. "I'm not ready," he whispered. Sarah didn't push him. She simply said, When you are, I'll be here. Meanwhile, in another part of town, a man sat in a dark apartment, watching the news on a small TV. He saw Amir's face on the screen. The man's hands shook. He turned off the TV. I didn't mean for this kid to get blamed, he muttered. This wasn't supposed to happen. Back in court, the judge stood up and said, "Tomorrow, we will hear more testimony. But I believe this case is not as simple as it seems." The crowd murmured. Some people began to wonder, who was Amir really? And what truth was still hidden? The next morning, the courtroom felt different. There was a strange silence in the air, as if everyone was waiting for something to change. Judge Harris walked into the room slowly, holding the file of Amir's case tightly in his hand. He sat down in his chair, looking serious but thoughtful. He had read Amir's file all night. The report was thin. No criminal record, no history of violence, no known bad behavior. The only thing that stood out was this: a boy who had lost everything but still tried to survive. Judge Harris had seen many criminals in his career. Some lied, some blamed others. But Amir didn't do any of that. He didn't fight. He didn't cry. He just sat quietly, alone. And that silence was starting to bother the judge. He called the court to order. The prosecutor, as always, stood up with full energy. "Your Honor, as we proved yesterday, the evidence points clearly to Amir. We believe the court must make its decision quickly." But before the judge could respond, Sarah, Amir's lawyer, stood up. "Your Honor," she said calmly, "I request more time. There are details in this case that need further investigation." The prosecutor rolled his eyes. More time for what? The boy had the chance to speak and chose not to. Sarah looked at Amir. He was sitting still, hands shaking just slightly. "I believe he will speak," she said softly. Judge Harris leaned forward. He looked directly at Amir. "Amir," he said, "do you understand what's happening here?" Amir nodded. The judge continued, "This court is not here to punish innocent people, but we can only help you if you tell us your truth." Amir looked up slowly. His eyes met the judge's. And for a moment, something passed between them, an understanding, a signal of pain, and perhaps trust. But Amir still didn't speak. He simply lowered his head again. Judge Harris took off his glasses and sighed. He turned to the prosecutor. "I have a question," he said. "Where are the stolen items now?" "In police custody," the prosecutor replied. "They were found in a nearby alley." "Any fingerprints on them?" the judge asked. "Yes, some partial prints," the prosecutor said, "but they haven't been fully matched." The judge paused. "Why not?" The prosecutor seemed surprised. "Because we already have a suspect. We didn't think it was necessary." The judge frowned. "But what if those fingerprints aren't Amir's?" The courtroom went silent. Even the prosecutor looked uncertain now. Sarah saw her chance. "Your Honor," she said, "I believe there is someone else involved. Someone Amir may be protecting. Or maybe someone set him up." The judge nodded slowly. "I'm starting to think the same," he said. He looked back at Amir. "You don't have to carry this alone, son," the judge said. "You've already suffered enough." Amir's eyes filled with tears, but still no words. Outside the courtroom, the news had spread. People began talking. Maybe Amir isn't guilty. Maybe he's hiding something painful. Even those who had judged him before started wondering. A local journalist, Maya, who was covering the case, started digging deeper. She visited Amir's neighborhood, spoke to neighbors, and learned about Amina. She saw the one-room apartment, the broken fan, and the drawing of Amir and Amina on the wall. "He's just a kid," she whispered to herself. "A kid who's trying to survive." Back inside the courtroom, the judge made a decision. "We will delay this case," he said, "until further evidence is presented." The prosecutor looked frustrated. But Sarah smiled for the first time. Amir looked at her, and for the first time, he felt safe. That evening, back in his chamber, Judge Harris sat at his desk. He looked at Amir's photo again. Then, he picked up the phone and made a call. "Detective Miller, this is Judge Harris. I want those fingerprints tested, immediately. And check the surveillance cameras near the alley. I think we're missing something. Meanwhile, Amir sat in his cell. He held a small piece of paper in his hand, a note Amina had hidden in his pocket before the police took him. It said, in her tiny handwriting, "You're the best brother in the world. I believe you." A tear rolled down Amir's cheek. He whispered to himself, "I have to tell the truth, soon." The courtroom lights were dimmed that morning. Clouds gathered outside, and rain tapped softly on the windows. It was the kind of day that made everyone feel quiet, thoughtful, even the judge. Amir sat in the courtroom again, this time with something new inside him. Courage. It wasn't big, but it was growing. The night before, he had stared at his sister's note for hours. "You're the best brother in the world. I believe you." Her tiny words felt louder than the judge's voice, louder than the lawyers, louder than the crowd that had whispered about him for days. It was time. He had stayed silent for too long. Judge Harris entered the courtroom and looked straight at Amir. "I've asked for new fingerprint reports and more camera footage," he said. "Until that arrives, Amir, you may speak if you wish." There was silence. Everyone turned to the boy who hadn't said more than a few words since the trial began. Sarah, his lawyer, placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "It's okay," she whispered. Amir stood up. He took a deep breath. His voice was shaky, but real. "I didn't steal anything," he began. "I was outside the store that night, but I didn't break in. I was trying to get help." The room fell completely silent. The judge leaned forward. "Go on, Amir." I work all day. I don't go to school. I take care of my little sister. She was sick that night. Her fever was so high. I didn't have any money left. I went to the pharmacy. I begged them to help. They said no." Tears filled his eyes. "I walked to the store. I stood outside, hoping maybe someone would help me. Then I heard a loud noise. An alarm. I got scared and ran." He paused. "I didn't know someone else had already broken in." There was a moment of silence after he finished. Even the prosecutor looked uncertain now. Sarah turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I believe Amir is telling the truth, and I think someone else used that moment to commit the crime, knowing Amir was there." The judge nodded. "We are now treating this case differently." Later that day, the results of the fingerprint analysis arrived. Only one print belonged to Amir on a plastic bag found nearby. But the rest, they belonged to a man named Raymond Brooks. The name shocked the room. Raymond Brooks was a known thief. He had been arrested several times, but had recently disappeared from town. Suddenly, the courtroom wasn't focused on Amir anymore. It was focused on finding the real thief. Judge Harris ordered the police to begin searching for Raymond. He turned to the crowd. "This boy may have been in the wrong place, but that does not make him a criminal." The people whispered again, but now the tone was different. Sympathy. Guilt. Respect. Outside the courthouse, Maya, the journalist, published a story titled, "The Boy Who Stayed Silent to Protect His Sister." The article went viral in the town. People began sending letters of support. Some donated money to help Amir and Amina. A local doctor even offered free treatment for the little girl. That night, Amir returned to his cell. But for the first time, he didn't feel like a prisoner. He felt like someone who mattered. He looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "I told the truth, Amina." He closed his eyes, and for the first time in many nights, he slept peacefully. But the story wasn't over yet, because Raymond Brooks was still out there, and he had just seen Amir's photo on the news. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "This kid, he's gonna ruin everything," he muttered. And with that, Raymond disappeared again. News about Amir's case had spread quickly. People who once looked at him with suspicion were now talking about him with sympathy and respect. His story had touched hearts, not just in the courtroom, but all over the town. But one question remained. Where was Raymond Brooks? Raymond had gone into hiding. He had seen Amir's face on the news and realized something. The boy he had seen outside the store that night, quiet, scared, was now the one the police had arrested. And Raymond had stayed silent, because it was easier to let someone else take the blame. But now, The truth was coming out. Detective Miller, a sharp but kind officer, was assigned to find Raymond. He had read the full report and knew the case had been handled too quickly. He walked into Judge Harris's office the next morning. "Sir, I believe Amir was telling the truth. Raymond Brooks is our man, and I'm going to find him." The judge nodded. "Do it quickly. That boy has been through enough." Detective Miller began visiting old places where Raymond was known to stay: abandoned buildings, cheap motels, old warehouses. People were afraid to talk, but one old man gave him a clue. "Raymond? Yeah, I saw him 2 days ago. Looked nervous. Kept talking to himself. Said something about that kid ruining everything." Miller wrote it down. "He's scared," he said to himself, which means he's close. Meanwhile, Amir had been released from jail on temporary bail. He walked out of the courthouse into the fresh air, holding Amina's hand. The crowd outside clapped for him. Some even cried. One woman handed him a small bag of clothes. A boy offered him candy for Amina. It was the first time Amir smiled in weeks. That night, Sarah took Amir and Amina to a shelter for children. It was clean, safe, and warm. There was food on the table, books on the shelf, and a soft bed for Amina. Amir couldn't believe it. "Why are you doing this for me?" he asked Sarah. "Because you deserve a life, Amir," she said. "Not punishment, a future." In another part of town, Raymond was hiding in an old shed. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. He was angry. Angry at himself. Angry at the world. Angry at the boy who had dared to speak up. "This is all his fault," he growled. But deep inside, a small part of him felt shame. He knew Amir was innocent. He knew the boy had a little sister. He knew what he had done was wrong. Late at night, he walked out into the streets, hiding his face in the shadows. He went to the alley where he had once thrown the stolen items. He stood there for a long time, thinking, regretting, remembering. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. "Raymond Brooks." He turned quickly. Detective Miller stood there, calm but firm. "We've been looking for you." Raymond didn't run. He just sighed and sat down on the sidewalk. "You already know, don't you?" he said. "Yes," Miller replied, "but I need to hear it from you." Raymond looked up at the night sky. He took a deep breath. "It was me. I broke in. I stole the things. That kid, he didn't do anything." Back at the shelter, Amir was reading a bedtime story to Amina. She was already half asleep, holding his hand. The door opened. Sarah walked in, smiling. She knelt beside Amir and whispered, "They found him." Raymond confessed. Amir's eyes widened. His heart beat faster. He looked down at his sister, then up at Sarah. "So, it's over." Sarah nodded. The courtroom was full again. But this time, the feeling was different. There was no tension, no whispers of doubt, no judging eyes, only quiet respect for the boy who had walked through pain without ever giving up. Amir sat beside Sarah, dressed in clean clothes donated by a kind woman from town. His hands were still a little shaky, but his eyes looked stronger. He held Amina's drawing in his pocket, just like always. Judge Harris entered, holding a new file. This one had a different name on the cover: Raymond Brooks. "Court is now in session," the judge said calmly. "Today, we close the case of Amir Khan." Everyone leaned forward. The judge looked at Amir, then at the crowd. This boy stood silent, not out of guilt, but out of fear. Fear of losing his sister. Fear of being alone in a world that never gave him a chance. The courtroom was quiet. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Raymond Brooks has confessed," the judge continued. "His fingerprints, his actions, and his words match the evidence." He looked directly at Amir. "You are innocent, Amir. You are free." Gasps filled the room. Some clapped. Others cried. Amina, sitting at the back with the caretaker, ran forward and hugged her brother tightly. Amir held her close, tears streaming down his face. It was finally over. The chains were gone. The fear was gone. The silence was gone. Judge Harris wasn't finished. He looked at the people in the room. We, as a society, failed this boy. We were quick to judge, quick to blame, slow to listen. He turned to Sarah. And we thank those who still believe in truth. Then to the police. Let this be a lesson. Justice is not about speed. It is about truth and patience. After the hearing, the crowd surrounded Amir. People hugged him, gave him gifts, and took photos. Reporters asked questions, but Sarah gently guided Amir and Amina out of the building. They didn't need the cameras. They just needed peace. Outside, Maya the journalist handed Amir a newspaper. His photo was on the front page. The headline read, "From Suspect to Hero, the boy who never gave up." He looked at it, then gave it to Amina. "You keep this," he said. "This is your story too." Weeks passed. Amir and Amina were moved to a better shelter. With help from donations, they had food, clothes, and a small school nearby. Amir started taking evening classes. He wanted to become a lawyer like Sarah. "I want to help people like me," he told her. Sarah smiled proudly. "You already are." One day, Judge Harris visited the shelter. He brought a small gift, a notebook with Amir's name printed in gold. "I thought you might like to write your story," he said. Amir nodded. He opened the first page and wrote, "I was judged before anyone knew me. But now I speak for myself. And maybe for others too." Far away, Raymond Brooks sat quietly in prison. For the first time in years, he had admitted his crime. He had done wrong. But something about Amir had made him see the truth. "I hope that kid gets a real chance," he whispered to himself. Back at the shelter, Amina ran across the garden, holding her drawing in the air. It now had one more thing added, a sun shining above the two stick figures. One big brother, one little sister, smiling, together, safe.